welcome back to SPX 2017. I'm Rusty.
I am Joe, and with us today,
Ellen Vartanoff.
Ellen.
Ellen, welcome.
Ellen, what brings you to SPX?
What doesn't bring me to XPX?
Oh man,
Excellent.
I guess which list is shorter?
I don't think any of them are short.
Okay, understandable. Understandable.
No, because actually I was at the first SPX.
Oh wow, now we
Nice.
can't even claim that.
Yeah,
No,
we were
I
at this.
had a table.
Oh wow.
You had a table.
Oh yeah.
Because we were at the second
Yeah, I think we
SPX
were at the
on,
second
but we
one.
did not go to the first one.
It was
We
the
didn't.
first one that was on a Saturday. I think it was
Yep.
'96,
Yeah.
and because the other ones were weekdays, and we weren't allowed to go. We were
Yeah.
too
Right.
young. But then we went that first one. That was the first one for us.
yeah.
But you were at the first one. Tell us.
You beat us.
about
You
your
beat us
time.
to it by a
I
year.
beat you to it.
So
Well,
tell us
gee,
about-
I should hope so. I mean, given that I've been in the field one way and another for, I don't know, dare I say?
An imaginary number of years.
An imaginary.
yes.
Well, let me put it this way. My sister and I, my sister Irene Vartanoff, inveterate letter hack from way back when, we started officially collecting comics in 1959.
Oh wow.
Okay?
Nice.
And by the 70s, both of us were working in the business.
Wow.
Okay, so, you know, it's been a long haul, a very long haul.
That's wonderful.
I
had no
started
idea.
teaching comics and cartooning classes in '75, when
Wow.
it was still, you know,
I was gonna say,
just
that was probably
nerds, and nerds
unheard
was
of.
not a good
Absolutely.
word.
Yeah.
So there's been massive sea changes.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
I mean
yes.
you've seen we've been to the SPXs we've been to, most of them by a great number, and for us, just seeing the show change, you saw the industry change.
Oh, I saw life change. you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been quite a ride.
So what originally got you into working in comics?
Oh, well, actually, Irene and I were both in a group called Tysos, the Illegitimate Sons of Superman.
Good
It was
name.
one of the first,
Like a fan group.
yeah, it was one of the first clubs in fandom. It was a New York club primarily, and various people were in it who eventually got into the business. Len and Marv,
Oh wow.
really?
yeah. And a couple of 3-4 others. I mean, Jerry Conway was one of us. So, you know, I could name drop forever and it would
Yeah.
be silly.
What makes sense here? Like if you have a fandom, a fan club, especially in that time,
Oh, yeah,
then
because
it's the hardest of the hardcore. It's like these are the people super
Yeah.
interested.
absolutely, and particularly because when you're looking at this kind of period, what you're talking about is the first conventions
Yes.
in New York. And I wasn't at the 64 one. That one, Ron Fradkin, Bernie Bubness, and a couple others whose name I do not know, and I should, were organized it. But then the next year, Kaler organized his. Now, Kaler was also a Tysos member, okay? And so we're talking about, you know, the people who came to those cons, the first 150 or 200 people or so.
Yeah.
We're talking about people who you know, we'd known each other through letter hacks and all that kind of stuff, but never met.
Yeah.
But we were definitely what you would call nowadays hardcore. I mean, you know, because at that period, it was still within 10 years or so of the hearings and
Right.
Oh yes.
Wortham and all the rest of it. So, I mean, comics had a bad rap.
Yeah.
I mean, nowadays it's much easier to find your community, you know, online.
Oh yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah, online has changed all of Spanish
But
communities.
Yes.
then you really had to put some effort into.
Oh yeah.
You
So
know,
again, yeah, very
finding a
dedicated.
group to be that
Oh,
had
and
the similar
it's
interests.
not like you could call up anyone because not everybody had a phone back then.
Wow. Yeah. So
Okay? No, I mean, or if they did, it was a long distance call.
Yeah.
Do you know how pricey
Yeah.
those were in that
Right.
period? Okay. Well, so, you know, I mean, it was letter writing and meetups.
Yeah.
I mean, the stuff, for example, the first Academy Awards, you know, the Academy of Comic Book Arts, the Alley Awards predate those, as in Alley-Oop, and those were done at meetups at Jerry Bale's or Roy Thomas's or at, you know, like that. And so you're talking maybe 10 people would show up and the ballots would be around 150, 200, something in that range.
wow.
You know, we're talking the real deal here.
Yeah.
So
So you start from there. I guess what do you do within the comics world now?
okay, well, I started from there as a fan and collector, and I'm an artist, and my sister is a writer primarily. And so we were interested in the two parts that make up a comic.
Sure.
And so I started doing some artwork anyway. But I was kind of interested in both the business side and how it came about, and I'd always been someone who liked to mentor people, even when I was a kid. So in 1974, I took a cartooning course from a guy who was doing cartoons for covers of like Time magazine sort of thing, except local Washington area. And so what I did was, I took the course, but I thought it was not anywhere near as wide-ranging as it needed to be. And the next semester, he wasn't able to teach it. And so I volunteered to teach it because I just graduated at that place. It was called Maryland College of Art and Design.
Okay, yeah.
But it married into Montgomery College. Okay. And so I started teaching it. I came up with a syllabus and a curriculum and, reading material for everybody, and that just started me going.
I guess it'd be very much freewheeling and kind of off the cuff because you didn't really have anything to base it off of.
I didn't have much, although there was just beginning to be, the SVA and a couple other places in New York, like Pratt, did have some courses in it, and the SVA particularly, because that's, I think, where Eisner was teaching.
Yeah.
But you're right, there wasn't a whole heck of a lot to base it on. And in fact, this is the other thing that's so different now. It used to be that I would scrounge for any book that had reprints of comics or had anything about cartooning, right?
Yeah.
And there weren't a heck of a lot of them. There were maybe 5.
Wow.
Okay? And one of them was a scholarly one, and then the rest were how-tos, with the exception of one other that was sort of a mix of stuff. How to sell cartoons kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I started in what I called information sheets, and they're the prototype for what eventually someday I will turn into an actual textbook, because for all that they're now textbooks, they all have great stuff going on, but they all are little facets. It's like they've got blinders on. Yeah. And even back then they did. I mean, I would find that I could get maybe 5 books on it, and then every year there would be like another 2 or 3 that might come out on comics in some way or another. After all, you're talking within 10 years of Pfeiffer's great comic book heroes. So there wasn't a whole lot on the market, but there was some.
Yeah.
Well, nowadays, of course, if there's one a month, there's maybe 25 a month on comics. It's like you can't keep up.
And now, now it's the other direction. You have to pick and choose to find between which,
Well, you do. Of course, in a certain sense, you always had to pick and choose.
Yeah.
Because as my teacher in college would say, well, it has a 50-cent piece. That is to say, the painting was good, but this part was great, you know? Well, almost all of them had 50-cent pieces in them.
Right.
But then they'd fall down on some other part, in my view. Now, of course, that's just my view, because, of course, I have a certain way of teaching, and others have other ways of teaching. But I like to think that mine's pretty extensive. I
would imagine, you come at it from a different perspective than a lot of other people might.
Well, yeah, and first of all, I'm a Silver Age person. Before there was a Marvel Age of comics, you understand. So I like DC a lot.
Yeah.
But also, the way they did things back then was
Sure.
very different. And nowadays, it looks like most everyone's doing it based on structure and then building on structure, and that's a good beginning point. But it's, I won't say it's heartless because it isn't heartless, but you want the joy and the cleverness of the combination that make the media what it is.
Sure.
Yeah, not just mechanical. you
Not
know.
just mechanical, exactly. And I'm not saying that for example, Jessica Abel's one that's, what is it, drawing words, writing pictures or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. I mean, that's a good book. It has a lot of good stuff in it. But it's, again, skewed.
Sure. I wonder if, because you've seen so many, and through the entire expanse of your, exposure
Yeah.
to comics, that you're able to see, not deficiencies necessarily, but areas of opportunity that
Yeah.
the person creating it, because they're putting, 100% of their thought process, their ideas for what is next case, what would be useful, and you're like, that is really good. But, if I could take a piece of this and put it with this, and you start seeing what other people kind of bring that maybe they forgot.
Yeah, well, that's really my main ability, is that I seem to have something close to a photographic memory when it comes to comics. Because back in the day, they didn't have credits on most of the comics.
Right.
And so you had to learn how to tell whose work from whose work. And so you got really good at that. Well, I memorized so many things that I was able to pick out where somebody copped a picture from.
Oh, nice.
Okay, and so you can see the sequence of events, and you can also say, well, that's a good thing that this person copped and did a take of, but what if he had taken that instead? Or did you see how he used that particular piece there, and how he had that all blank?
I remember when I was into comics, I probably really got into them mid to late 80s when I was, 6 to 10. But, my comics were more, I don't know.
X-Men
maybe more,
and stuff?
No, that's the thing. No, it was like more milquetoast, like the Marvel Star line with Heathcliff and Top Dog.
Oh, yeah.
And Richie
No,
Rich
that's how
and-
you're supposed to get into
and
it,
yeah,
with
the
fun
Archie
little
books.
ones.
I grew
Yeah.
up in Riverdale, Maryland. I saw Archie lived in Riverdale. I thought it was cool.
Oh,
So,
that is cool. I didn't realize you were local.
So I got into that, and then when I befriended Rusty in middle school, Rusty was coming at it from the X-Men side, the exciting superhero comics.
Like mainstream superhero
And
stuff.
he introduced me to a lot. I mean, I was already into some of it, but he really kind of helped bring a lot more to that to
Have
me.
you guys seen Captain Underpants?
Yeah.
Yes.
The relationship of the
Yes.
guys sounds
Yeah.
like what you're describing.
So what made me think of this though was early on I would get so frustrated because Rusty could just call out the artists just by seeing some of their work.
Right.
And to me it was like a language I didn't understand.
Oh,
Like how
yeah,
They look
okay.
the same. And so then I would be like, no, this looks like this person. He's like, no, it doesn't look anything like it.
Obviously, if you
And-
look at these
and it was
lines.
so frustrating because he had such a highly evolved like a visual cutie for who the artists
Oh,
were.
sure.
And I was just
And it-
just doing my best.
And it was just from pouring through,
yeah, totally.
issue after issue
Yeah.
after
Oh
issue.
yeah, no, I mean, and that's the way it is. I mean, you get to pouring through them, and they just they inebriate you.
I bet it's in some ways like if like a movie director, for example.
Oh,
where
yeah.
If you just see a couple movies in general, they're pretty much the same beast to you. Like the story might be different, the actors are going to be different, but they're just movies. But then if you get really familiar with the different
you
movies,
can do
you
that.
can pick up on the ticks
Yeah.
of the
You
director.
can.
Yeah.
And in fact, that's what's so interesting, for example, about Ridley Scott is he always has atmosphere in his pieces. You look at Legend, one of his early ones, and there's this sort of fairy-like, dusty atmosphere.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you look at Black Rain, and it's all this gray. And you look at, of course, Blade Runner, and that's got a palpable atmosphere.
Even,
So that's his way of going about things.
That's funny because like they had to release the trailer for the new Blade Runner.
Oh, yes.
And that's heavily atmospheric. You see the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's so much texture
which is
to that.
why it's encouraging.
Yeah, totally.
But
So with your wide and vast and varied experience with comics, what do you think about SPX in this day?
Oh, I'm just delighted.
What delights you about it?
Well, I mean, this gives an opportunity for everybody to say their piece. Everybody, no matter what their stripe or anything. It used to be that fanzines was the stepping stone into Prodom. But now, I mean, and then in the 80s and into the 90s, the black and whites in the alternative or ground level comics, as they like to be called, those were some of the stepping stones. After all, people like Matt Wagner got copped by DC Comics to do Batman and other stuff. And there are people like him all over who started out in black and whites.
Yeah, totally.
After all, that's what McLeod started out as.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Zot.
Doing the old Zot work, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but even before Zot, there was another one. But yeah, Zot, I mean, Zot is brilliant.
It is.
I mean, it is just brilliant. I mean, he may think that sculptor is a wonderful thing, and I'm not saying it's not, but Zot was something to tie to. It was really a brilliant piece, and I would bring it into my class and say, see what he did here? See how he totally changed the perspective there? I would bring it, that's the thing, I would bring in books, and I still do. I mean, I have backpacks full of books that I bring into the classes, and I say, well, take a look at this. I want you to look at how he did this, or how she did that.
What do you think about the idea, the nature of this show, and independent comics in general, that there's such a low barrier of entry? There's not really a gate for you to break through. Anybody can make comics.
Well, but the to some extent, the population will weed out the credzines.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, if
I'm all for it. I think it's wonderful that anybody can partake in the art.
But that's one of the major sea changes is the technological advancements that put it within the reach of anybody, because it sure wasn't before.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I mean, it costs all kinds of money to get any kind of visual reproduction, let alone color.
Oh yeah. And then even beyond print now, with the digital medium, it's completely democratized.
It is very democratized. I have a slight bone to pick with them, but that's okay. Because webcomics are so easy and facile, and I use the term very specifically, there is a tendency for people to not just appropriate images, that's a whole nother discussion, but I think there's a real tendency for it to go back to the flat stuff. And I don't mind flat artwork. I really don't. But I think that there are some folks who don't realize what black can do for you. They're unaware of spotting blacks as a technique, and it would so improve their work. Just totally change the look of their work in ways that would help them tell the story.
Right.
And that's the key issue. And I think that the ones that are not taking advantage of that because, we can just slap color in, don't realize that color will not save a bad comic.
Oh yeah.
Color will enhance a good one in black and white.
Yeah.
It will make it sing, but it won't save a bad comic.
Yeah. And it won't tell a story.
It'll distract. And I get to say this because I was a colorist in the 70s.
Okay.
There you go.
I was in the women's ghetto of coloring, and I did coloring. Now, mine wasn't the most spectacular coloring you've ever seen. I'd say Petra Goldberg was the best at the lot at that time. But having said that, you learn about things. You learn about pacing of color. You learn about balance and contrast. You learn about a lot of stuff. Now, I already was something of a colorist anyway in my fine arts painting.
I don't know much about comic coloring really, but we have a friend who is becoming, I guess, a very popular comic colorist for Marvel Comics specifically.
Oh yeah.
And it's really interesting to see his process work and see how, like, not necessarily philosophical, but I guess philosophical the way he attacks his projects. It's really interesting. Things that
like palette choices for certain types of stories.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yes,
themes.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's
Now
just
that's
so
a good
interesting.
colorist.
Yeah.
That's a good colorist because you should be doing things that reflect the artwork.
Yes.
You should be giving it that extra oomph.
I say this as really knowing nothing about coloring really, but it seems like the colors that really attack it as a storytelling vehicle, like this is my way to help tell the story.
Yeah.
They seem to really do an excellent job of adding to things.
Oh yeah, they make all the difference. I would say someone like Lee Lothridge.
Okay.
Yeah, because he works with J.H. Williams III.
Oh yes.
gosh.
And I mean that's spectacular
Seriously.
work.
Every page looks like a
Williams
poster.
is just amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His
And
layout, his sensibility is just fabulous.
And that's a perfect example of a really well-matched colorist with a pencil or anchor, because he does this amazing layouts and he does this amazing page design, and then the colors are totally in tune with it and enhance it.
Well, and that's the other thing about being a black and white artist. If you're good in black and white, you leave spaces for color. You don't get it so rendered that there's nowhere to put the color.
We've had a lot of conversations where we'll find a comic that's in color or one that's in black and white, and you can totally tell that they intended it to be the other way.
Yeah.
It's like this art is so empty and vacuous that they must have thought this is going to be colored at some point.
But that doesn't solve it. I mean,
no, it doesn't
exactly,
solve it,
but you can tell
that they intended.
Nothing is rendered, thoroughly, and it's really just
and
like a coloring book.
That's my beef with the people online doing. Not enough, because they think that one color step down or two step downs of color is enough to give shadow.
Yeah.
No.
No, like you say, it can help.
It can
but
help,
it's not necessarily
but it's not enough. You need the black in there. The black has beauty and richness and flow.
So what are you currently working with? You're teaching currently, or?
I teach currently, but I'm also working my own graphic novel.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, I've been working on that forever.
Hey, as long as you're still working on it.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, I have a sample of it right here.
Very nice.
Fantastic. Hold it up.
So tell us about this.
It's Sinaway the Sailor, Black Pearl of the Red Sea and the Black Sea, and his girlfriend, who will be his wife eventually, Princess Belkis, Fire Opal of the Desert.
Okay.
And think of like Prince Valiant in 1300.
Sure.
Okay,
and you'll have a sense of sort of where I'm going. But of course,
you.
I'm wrapping other stuff in too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's inevitably going to be a little bit of Sinbad the Sailor and a little bit of Count of Monte Cristo and, all kinds of other stuff. But it's actually based in true information from that period. I've always loved archaeology. I mean, I'm a nut for it. If it weren't for certain things, I would have been an archaeologist, not an artist. But so I've been researching this, and in the last 20-some years that I've been working on this, they have found more things from that period that I can add in. So it's quite wonderful.
That's good that it keeps coming along with you, yeah.
It does, and it's quite lovely that way. But what it is he's a sea tradesman, but not just exclusively on the sea. So you've got the Levant, you've got the Aegean Sea, the Black Sea, you've got the Red Sea, the Persian Gulf, and all the way to India, and Gujarat, that side of India. And then you've got all the land routes, because the Silk Road was the Silk Road before there was silk being exported. And we know this because if you look at the tomb of Tutankhamun, look at all that lapis lazuli. There's only one place that grows. Afghanistan. Which means they had trade with them. So, I mean, those kinds of pieces of critical information can be woven into a full-blown story.
Yeah, totally.
And so that's what I'm working towards.
Nice.
That's awesome.
So do you have, are there any, I guess, internet websites or other type of contact information that if people want to learn more about what you're teaching or anything else?
Actually, they have to go to the actual sites of the places because I don't have a website yet.
Oh, okay.
No, I will though. It'll be ellenvartanoff.com.
All right.
I've already reserved it, but
Well, that's good.
First step.
I haven't quite gotten there. You'd think someone who's a science fiction fan would not be kicking and screaming into the 21st century.
Right.
But no, I'm a traditionalist. I'm old school. I do this all in pen and ink.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
Well, that's the primary focus, so that's good.
Yeah.
Story first.
Well, I mean, and the truth is, if you don't know how to do it on paper, you don't know what to tell the computer to do.
That's true.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely. So, Ellen, before we let you go, would you like to answer a mystery question?
Oh, sure.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay.
All right.
Well, now, let's see what this says. You're going to have to read it because I don't have my glasses.
It's going to be a little tough. That's all right.
You're going to have to take it apart.
Be mighty. Ah. So what is our question? Talk to me.
So your question is, which would you rather flip, a coin or a table?
I'd rather flip a coin because it's much more interesting, the physics of it.
I like that answer.
I like that.
Well, and it can stand upright. I mean, the odds of that are pretty high, but
Yeah.
But there is that possibility,
there's
yes.
that possibility.
That's true. You never know.
Yeah.
Wow,
Good.
that's a really thoughtful answer.
Yes.
Instead of being rage-filled, like I want to flip the table.
Nah,
more thoughtful.
Much prefer the
I
elegance.
don't believe in that kind of rage.
Ah.
That's why I say what I did about Sinaway, because, yeah, he's going to have a time when he loses his temper, sure.
Right.
But you know, adults don't do that.
They really don't, yeah.
And that's the whole point of the difference between DC and Marvel many times.
Yeah?
The whole, we have to have real arguments with each other. Mostly adults don't do that.
Yeah. It's a much like over dramatized version of
Well, and
real
the
life.
other thing that's interesting is that DC Comics, those are all people with standings in the community and such, and professionals, people and such. A lot of the Marvel Comics characters, not all of them, and there's nothing wrong with this, you understand, but they're blue-collar people. They're someone you could go down to the pub and have a drink with.
Very much so, yeah. That seemed to be like their philosophy behind the characters.
Yeah, the DC characters were more like gods, basically.
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say that, but yes.
Larger than life.
Yeah.
maybe.
Larger than life, yes, certainly.
And then it was all street level.
Except that they aren't in another way because, for example, Superman is really Clark.
Yeah.
Yes.
But Batman is not really Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne is really Batman.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So-
Bruce Wayne is the mask in that.
Yeah, Bruce
Scenario.
Wayne is the mask.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well,
I mean, they're the light and the dark reaction to the Great Depression.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah, totally. Yeah,
And in a way, sort of, so is Captain America and Submariner. Think about that a minute.
yeah, I guess
That
so.
is
I never really
interesting.
considered.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things where you really can't see the pop culture or the artistic response to an era until you're, much further away from it. And then you
Often that's true.
You can kind of see maybe the delay.
Although, if you're really good, you can see it beginning.
Well, I'm sorry. Then I would just
You
speak
got
for
to
myself.
train that eye for that, yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the things I look to because, of course, as a teacher, you want to be able to teach for the future, not just the past, even though you don't want them to have to reinvent the wheel.
No. That's true. Well, Ellen, I want to thank you so much for sitting down
Yes,
with us.
thank you for joining
Well,
us.
thank
This is
you.
awesome.
I've
I
been
really
wanting to
appreciate
do this for a while.
Oh, that's
We
great.
made it happen.
Yes.
Yes.